I know it's 1 o'clock and you're expecting me to say it's 1 o'clock. We're going to get this thing started. So it's
Yes.
1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get it started. Our next meeting will be October 20th. That's all I want to talk about on that slide. Upcoming classes, the class schedule. We have classes that will be done remotely using Microsoft Teams, videos, and live instruction. We have our first class, which is September 21st, which is next week sometime. It's a bridge division only microstation class. Chad and Randall are going to, I guess, pilot this program and see how it works out. And then they'll also get another shot at it in October, where we have fundamentals of microstation, and that's for design. So anybody who wants to sign up for that, they'll be able to do that. And then we have in November, we will have a Power Geo Road 1. Now these are all SS4, SS10, whatever we're in at that point in time. As far as classes go, and you can always go to mo.u to sign up for those. First speaker today, we're going to have 3 speakers. 3 people going to be talking. We'll have Kevin's going to give a little presentation on, or maybe a 5-minute, who knows how long that'll last, on some updates. And then Jim's going to talk about some stuff, and then I'll round it out at the end. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. You want to share your screen or anything? Or do you need?
I'll go ahead and share my screen. I got a little PowerPoint that
Let me turn it over to you so you can do that. You are now presenter.
Okay. Do you see my screen, Bill?
I do not, but let me look around.
Do I need to go to the share? Yeah, here we go. Never mind.
Yeah, you got to go to share.
Got it. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is just a PowerPoint that I used several months ago. I think I created it. It was back before we were all working at home. We were still in the office, and so we just wanted to give you another update of where everything's at. And so I'm just going to go ahead and go through this point one more time. Okay, so the next big thing that we're going to have at CADD is we're updating our ProjectWise, and what's happening is ProjectWise, where we store the files, is moving to a Bentley hosted environment. So no longer will the files be strictly stored on a MoDOT server. They're going to be in the Bentley cloud, and when we switch over to that, you really won't see any difference. You know, we'll just switch it one night. You'll go into ProjectWise the next day, and you really, from an end user standpoint, won't see any difference. So the ProjectWise file servers in the districts and regional offices will still remain in place for performance, and we're basically going to turn those into something called like a caching server. So when you go open up a file and that's the first time you've opened that file up, it's going to download it from the cloud. It's going to cache it on your regional servers, and then it's going to copy it locally to your machine on your computer. Okay, so the performance should be identical to what you have now as far as speed goes. It's not going to slow down just because it's on the cloud. We're going to utilize again the servers in the district and regional offices as caching machines. There'll also be some new functionality called ProjectWise 365 Services, which has already become available to us. We're actually working on some of this right now with some of the district users, and we'll talk more about that probably in future meetings here to show you more of the functionality of what that is. Again, you guys are mostly still on Power GeoPack SS4, but that is going away at the first of the year, and we started that back in 2015 with SS4. So again, that's going away at the first of the year, and we're going to replace it with something called SS10. And why they called it SS10, you know, why didn't they call it SS5? I'm not for sure, but all of a sudden they had an SS10 version, and really that SS10 version is pretty much identical to SS4. There's really no difference between it except for just a couple minor things, and I've got those on the next slide here. So users will have to sign into the connection client in order to get a license in order for SS10 to work. if we don't go to SS10, what's going to happen is we're going to have to, they call it a node lock, and we're going to have to, we would have to apply a license to the actual computer in order for our SS4 to work after the first of the year. And we don't really typically like node locks. And so that's the main reason why we're going to SS10, is because it uses the connection client for licensing. Okay. And then again, you'll have to sign into this, and then once you sign in, SS10 will pop open. The other thing, the other reason why we're going to SS10 is because SS10 is Bentley's officially supported software. SS4 would not be supported, but in reality, nothing has really has been updated to SS10 or SS4 in a long time. They have been really focused on the ORD, the Open Roads Designer package, which is the next version that was going to replace SS4 and SS10. So even though it's supported, it really, no updates have been done to it in some time. So what is the timeline for SS10 to be pushed? Well, Bentley's shutting SS4 down at the first of the year, so that's our deadline. We got to get it done by the end of the year. So Chris is still working on the scripting and stuff. He's really focused mainly on the ProjectWise upgrade right now, so his time has been kind of focused on that. You know, this is kind of on his back burner. He's still working on it whenever he has time, but he will get to that, get this done by the first of the year. So we are still working heavily on Open Roads Designer. We've been, you know, we had I gave my guys a July 1st deadline to get all the support material done, and we kind of hit that for the most part. We still have a few minor things that we're still working on. You know, we want all the training material updated. That includes manuals, videos, and we got most of that done. We still have a couple videos to do. There's some issues with plotting that we need to still look at, because the plotting routine is going to change, and we got to see how that's going to interact with the new way of doing sheets and stuff like that. So we're still working on just a couple minor things, but for the most part, it's looking pretty good. So when we haven't really set a date for conversion yet, or going to the new version. It's probably going to happen probably just after the first of the year, or maybe a little bit beyond that. You know, Bentley is still providing or having quarterly updates, or they try to have quarterly updates, and they fix bugs with every time they update. They fix more and more bugs, and so you know, we have a pretty long list of stuff that we submitted to them. We're hoping they fix. You know, some of the bugs are just things that would frustrate you, and we're hoping they fix those before we have to push it out. Some of it's functionality issues where, you know, this used to work in SS4 and SS10, but it's not quite there in ORD, and we're hoping they can address some of those things. And so that's probably the biggest reason, or one of the big reasons we haven't pushed it yet, is some of the functionality is just not there that we think would frustrate you guys. And so we're kind of holding until they get a little bit further along in that. Right now, we plan on implementing kind of the same way we did SS2 to SS4. You know, back then we had the surveyors go first in each district, and then we then came out to the districts and we trained for a day or two, and then we stuck around with, you know, helping you in the new program with conversion if we do decide to convert. That is going to be an option. We can you know, convert projects if they're, you know, at a certain point. You know, we may let you finish in SS10. Otherwise, we might convert you. So we're still trying to figure that all out, when the best time is to switch you over as far as converting a project up to ORD. So what's the difference? What's different about Open Roads Designer? Well, there's no more GeoPack, En-ROADS, or MX, and that's the three civil engineering programs that Bentley had. And they basically have merged all those into one product called Open Roads Designer. It's 64-bit technology, so it takes on a lot more of the computer's memory. And all the old native tools have been updated. Now, they may not be updated to the point where we like them to be updated, but there are no more native tools anymore in Open Roads Designer. And so things like the plan sheet tool, that was still the old SS2 plan sheet tool, that's been updated. The alignment stationing is brand new. It doesn't use a GPK anymore. So GPKs are non-existent. And a lot of the COGO tools that we're missing, like translation, rotation, scaling tool, that's all in there now in the new ORD. Something that's kind of similar, our survey and design features are the same. Before in SS4, they were called a feature definition, a survey feature definition, a design feature definition, and they were basically two different animals because they had different attributes to them. Well, in Open Roads Designer, a feature definition is a feature definition, whether it's survey or design, it's the same type of feature definition. So that'll be a plus. There's a new interface. It's more like an Office product where you got ribbons across the top. And the manage workspace will now be in ProjectWise and not on the T drive. So T drives could theoretically go away after we push out to the districts because we don't need the T drive anymore for the workspace. It'll be in ProjectWise. And that's basically what that said there as well. So 32 versus 64-bit. So I went out and did a Google search on that, and a 32-bit processor can handle just over 4 gigs and put 4 gigs in memory, okay? But a 64-bit can handle just over 17 billion gigabytes of memory. So quite a bit more memory can be utilized in the new program. Most of our laptops or our workstations are 64-bit, but the program, the SS4 program, can't utilize it because it was written in 32-bit code. So this memory, when you're working with big files, terrain models, LiDAR files, it should run a lot smoother and handle the bigger files. So here's a picture of what Open Roads Designer looks like. You can kind of see the ribbons across the top. The nice thing about this is most of the tools are identical to what's in SS4. You just got to figure out where the tool is at, and we've tried to organize it so that you can find those tools fairly easy. So, and again, we'll explain all that when we come out and train you guys when we decide to go to ORD. Also, the ProjectWise is going to kind of be restructured a little bit. We believe that everything should be under the job number, whether it's bridge or design or survey or whatnot. And in the past, people have always kind of freaked out about, they wanted their stuff in their own little area so nobody else can mess with it. But with ProjectWise, permissions control, we can take care of that and just put everybody under one job number. We think that's the right way to do it. And so we're still open to discussion about all this stuff. So if you have a grave concern about what we're doing, just let us know and we can talk about it. So, but again, with permissions, we don't think this will be an issue at all if we put everybody under one hood instead of everybody spread out all over the place. And so there's just a blow up of what we're proposing. It'll be, kind of the same thing. Each district will have a list of counties, and under those counties will be the job numbers. And that's all I got on the update, guys. So I'm done unless people have questions about that.
Thank you, Kevin.
And I will stop sharing, Bill.
Okay. Let me get Jim on as a presenter.
All right, have you got me presenting?
I can hear you. Yeah, I think you're presenting now.
Okay. So let me get this started. So can everyone see my, can you see my PowerPoint there, Bill?
No, you need to do the share option.
Oh, okay.
Share pull down.
Let me minimize this. All right.
It'd be share And then content, you got it, Jim.
There
It's
we
coming.
go.
It's coming. It's on its way.
See it?
Yes.
All right. So a couple of things that I'm going to talk about today. I know some of you have seen the recent changes with the coordinate points sheet, but there's also another change we're proposing or would like to propose, and that's to do away with the reference point plan sheet. Just to kind of get started, you know, here's just a couple images of our current point list, as well as a reference point sheet that has been completed. Most of everybody's probably seen that. So just a little bit of history about the reference point sheet. This sheet was really created back in the earlier days when we didn't have total stations, we didn't have GNSS technology. The surveyors would go out, they would traverse along the corridor. Once they had the alignment and everything pretty in, they would place control points at all the key breaks and line segments like POTs, PCs, PIs, PTs, and so forth. And that's usually what was referenced here. Because back then everything was referenced to the center line, all the topography, any boundary lines, surveyors would go and set up on those control, pull a chain or whatever and use a theodolite, turn angles, measure distances, that kind of thing. Then, let me get to that spot. Sorry, I missed a slide. So here's an example of what I was just talking about. They would just come in and they'd place marks along the center line. They'd do all their survey. The other thing is it forced them to be out in the center of the highway. You know, whenever they were doing existing roadways, they had to be in the center of the road. And then along comes the use of coordinate geometry when we had total stations and survey controllers with surveying software. That was a new step, new phase. That's kind of when the department transitioned from the old surveying method to the new surveying method. Kind of what we're using now. We set control outside the roadway, more in a safe environment, convenient. You'd have surveyors standing behind a total station, measuring to a prism pole, to another person on a rod measuring. They no longer had to use chains or tapes or anything. It was all measured with lights. And then, and everything was even during that period of time, everything was still based on a independent coordinate system. Even though we had coordinate geometry, everything was still whatever the surveyor wanted to establish the project coordinate system. So a lot of times it'd be 50,000, 20,000. Everything was referenced. All the angles and distances began at that origin point. Although they were measuring everything outside the roadway, they could do topography, things like that, and be based on that starting point. No longer do they have to do any surveying from a center line aspect of things, so that eliminated that part of it. So this was kind of the first step to where we are now. Seeing as how we still used coordinates that were independent, our reference point sheet was still required because everything was unique to the project, and surveyors had to go out and physically pull tapes, measurements off of objects that were referenced, metal detector, locate it, dig it up, and set their total stations up and begin work from that. So even with the coordinate system, even though we're starting to move to where we are today, we still had to use that coordinate sheet. So then today, it's a little different scenario. We still use the control off roadway, off in a convenient spot, but with the coordinate system all of our projects are based in state plane. And since everything is based on state plane, it gives us the ability to just place control in the ground and have the ability to go back and find those points without the need of the reference point sheet. So in other words, you have your reference points out there, they're placed in the ground. A person, engineer, surveyor can easily go and take a GNSS receiver, walk out to the project, stake out that control, uncover it, and they're off and running if they need be. So with the way we've migrated or evolved in technology, the reference point sheet is really almost obsolete, if you will. Most surveyors that I've seen or talked to, even our construction folks, they'll just put it in a survey controller and they'll just go out and stake it out. Once they get in the area, they'll take the metal detector, get exactly where it's at, and just dig it right up. So what we're proposing is to eliminate this reference point sheet totally out of the plans. It really has no value today because, like I said, surveyors, engineers are keying everything into a survey controller and locating it with the GNSS. The one thing we are proposing as well as, and I think we've talked about this before, some people may be doing it by now, but including the digital image of the field book in with the electronic deliverables. Typically, the surveyors are already doing this for the designers. They make a copy of the field book, they send it down to design transcribes it over into that reference point plan sheet, and away it goes. This is just one step that we can add to the electronic deliverables. And for those instances, which are probably very few, that a surveyor or engineer needs to recover one of these points and they don't have GNSS, they still have this ability to do it with this type of digital image. So I think this is the way we should be going, just because I think the production of the plan sheet is really, it's a process we go through, but it's rarely used anymore. Most folks would rather just key it in, stake it out with a GNSS, and away they go. And next thing is we're going to talk about the recent changes. So the coordinate point, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of questions about this. So in recent, we updated the coordinate point list. The reason for this was we had a lot of, I say a lot of, but several times we'd have folks confused, whether they use state plane or whether they use modified. They would try to go from one system to another. It was a little bit confusing having them both on a plan sheet. So what we proposed was to only list the modified state plane coordinates. And when we proposed that, we had to take care of a couple of other things that our planning, or our plans review folks wanted. And that was, how are we going to reference all this back to state plane and ensure folks understand that our projects are still being referenced to state plane. So we derived this table here, or I derived this table here on the left-hand side, which shows the metadata. And so if I click through here, you know, the first thing is we included, with the update, we included the control points. So not only do we have the alignment points, but we also now have the control points, which what was normally referenced on the reference point sheet. We've moved them over to the coordinate sheet. We've consolidated it. And then the next thing is we added this metadata table. This table here is for those folks that want to be able to go from our modified state plane value, which is what our projects are designed and what they're constructed in, if there's a need to go back to state plane, this information that's in this table allows a surveyor, engineer, whoever to go back to state plane. So we can run through this a little bit. You know, obviously everybody knows what the modified coordinate system is. NAD 83, their horizontal datum, NAD 83 Epic 2010. That's our current datum that our MoDOT network's running in. Most surveyors are migrated over to this. Our vertical datum, that's pretty much standard or should be standard, is North American Vertical Datum 88. We just usually put GNSS derived, and that's because most of the surveyors will go out with their GPS and establish a point on the project for all their vertical benchmarks and everything to be referenced from. So they set an initial point on the project, and then that is what everything is based on. And usually that's based on a GPS observation utilizing the next thing on there, which is a geoid model. Then there's elevations that's listed now on that point list. Those elevations, I'll just back up real quick. These elevations on here, we prefer those to be differential level elevations. I know that some folks are still using GPS to establish elevations for control points. If there is no plans of upgrading those with some sort of bench level run, then that's just what it has to be. But I know we are working with the districts now to try to get everybody over to running bench levels through the project so that we can tighten up on those verticals. So in this area here, you know, you'll have to, your surveyor, let me just say this real quick. The surveyor should be giving you all this data. If you're not getting it, you just need to ask them. But they should be able to provide that. Your projection factor, of course, and then we move into the reference control information. This was the portion that we had to do for our plans review folks. And this was to provide a control station that was in state plane so that a person could reproject the modified back up to state plane. In addition, it also helps the surveyors in the future, 10 years from now, if they come back on this project and maybe they've got control that's still left out there on the project, and they're able to recover it, they can actually upgrade that control to whatever the current horizontal datum and vertical datum is currently being used at that time, just by using a few steps that they should know how to do to reproject that up. And then the next thing is there's the average grid factor. The average grid factor is just basically what the average grid is for the project. It's also what is used to derive the projection factor. And then there's just an example of how we are going to take the state plane up to modified or vice versa, so that someone, actually it's going from ground back to grid, so that someone has an example of how they need to take the coordinates that are listed on our coordinate list and take them back to state plane if they was to need those values. And I just always show, and whenever you folks do the plans, just pick one of your control points that's in your list and just apply the grid factor and the mathematics behind it, and just put those values there, so that if someone goes and tries to convert from modified back to state plane, they have an example of what the values should be, and it just ensures that they're doing it correctly. And that's really it for me. Questions?
Thanks, Jim. That's pretty good. And a little shorter than I was expecting from you, but that's good. Okay, let me go back to presenting. Okay, share my content. Okay. Can you see my screen? Am I presenting?
Yep.
Yes.
Good deal. Oh,
Yes.
that was Jim. Here's his phone number, email, and you seen Kevin's. And now it's my turn. So I'm going to do a technology preview of the End Area Volumes in Open Roads Designer. I had a video planned out for it, but I'm just going to do it live. It'll take me about 20 minutes to go through this. So I opened up a brand new file, blank file. Before you do any of this stuff, you want to make sure that you went into your corridors and make sure it's on the final design stage, which is now called feature definition. But it's the same thing as SS4's design stage. You want to go in there and make sure it's at the final so we interpolate a lot less. And then you'll create a brand new file. Now, I've done videos and I showed a preview on how to do cross sections. Cross sections are a little different. And I talked about live nesting on that one, how we can utilize it as a retainer file and bring in one and everything comes in. In this case, when you're doing your earthwork or your calculations, you want to make sure that you don't use live nesting and you just want to bring in the certain corridor that you want to do your cross sections on. So right now I went through, I've already set up my coordinate system. I copied it from another file that's in the folder, and I'm using it NAD 83 Missouri State Plains. And this project's just the one that we're using for class, and we'll use a piece of it. So I'm going to change my workflow up to Open Roads Modeling. And then I want to go to Home, and I'm looking for my reference dialog, which it happens to be the default one. So same as before, I just want to do a tools attach and bring across what I need to have for my earthwork calculations. So I'm in my folder. I'm looking for my corridors route 54. I'll do that one. Civil geometry you need for your picking of the alignment. And then you want your terrain. You want your surface, your existing ground. I'm going to add all three of those into the pick box and then go ahead and hit the OK button. And then I'm going to move on through the next dialog. Here's the one that we want to make sure is nesting depth of 0. And the reason is because right now when we do our earthwork calculations, it can only calculate, or it will calculate whatever's in the DGN file. So if you just want to do one corridor, you'll have to separate them. And nesting depth of 1 will not separate them. That'll bring in the ramp 4 corridor that goes along with this project. So it's important just to do like we did in SS4. We'll do a 0 on all three of these. And then I'll hit a fit view and make sure I got my project. I do. Close it out. Next step is to make our terrain active. And once the heads-up display pops up, we're good to go. My element selection tool is all the way on the other screen. Okay, so now I have my terrain active so I can see everything will be in my 3D file. So I'm gonna hit, and this is important with the new program, is that when we do these cross sections, we have to have both views open, the 2D and the 3D, to get it to work. So I'm gonna hit the F6 key, and the area I'm gonna work in is gonna be right here. I'm just gonna do a couple of sections through here. I don't want to do the whole project. It'd take a long time to process. So once you've got both windows open, then what you want to do is go to your, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to see it. I got a box in my way. And there we go. I got it out of the way. Okay, I need to go to the Drawing Production tab. Still in the Open Roads Modeling workflow, but we go to this Drawing Production. And in here, we've got some named boundary area down here at the end. And we'll select the name boundary to get it to start. And this is just like placing the cross-section tool. So you'll need the civil cross-sections. We'll need to pick which is the 4th icon. We need to pick a drawing seed. And for this one, 10 scale works out pretty good. It incorporates most of the project, or all of in that area, covers it all. And then the next step that you need to do is you want to follow your prompts down at the bottom left, and it says identify a path. So I'm going to pick that 54, route 54. That's on my cursor. It gives me a name, and this is going to be the name of your name boundary group. So I'll stick with that. And I'm going to do a station range of 617 to 622. So when I go to populate this, there's one thing about selecting my range, and what I'm going to do for my stationing is I got to take into consideration that I do have an equation back here that's going to be off by 1.01. So I will have to give it a region 2 because before the equation is region 1, after the equation is region 2. So I'm going to come out here, I'm going to swipe through, give it a 617 plus 00, and then my R2. And then I lock that in by just hitting the left mouse button. Then I come out and accept that value, and you can see it's starting to create these shapes in our 2D window of our cross sections. I want to go to 622. I'll do a region 2 as well. Hit the enter key, and then you can see where they're at. And for this demo, I'm just going to do 100 on the interval and lock that in. That way I've only got a few sections to deal with. It'll process a lot quicker. Okay, you can change your left and right offsets however you want. I think we're good to go, and where these shapes are going to go, everything's inside it. So I'm going to leave it where it's at, but you can change these. And again, like I talked in the cross section one, is that you want to make sure that you follow the seed that you're using. And a 10 scale sheet gives us 280 feet to deal with. So whatever can fit in that sheet is what you want to use it. Fit it within that 280 foot. Next part of it is we're going to create a drawing, and we do want to show the dialog. So all I need to do is go out in a blank area and start accepting to place the cross section boundary, and then place the tool or get the next tool to come up. When this tool comes up, this dialog, the main thing about this dialog is that we want to add annotation to it. So these cross sections, like I showed before a couple months back, they're automatic. You can automatically have your cross sections annotated, and you'll see we have a few annotation groups out here for whatever you want to see. We have the excess annotation with the grid, so you get the full major and minor grid, and you have one without the grid, no grid at all. And then we had to have an end area volume annotation, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. And then we have a new one, annotation with major grid, because I know a lot of people like to turn off that minor grid. This will give you an option just to run it with the major grid. But for this, I want everybody to see everything, so I'm gonna do without grid. This open model is important if you wanted to go in and check out the different models that open up to the last sheet model. I don't want to do that. I want to create some cross sections or go on with the earthwork part of it. So I'm going to uncheck that. I'm going to hit the OK button, and it's going to process all those sheets down here in the bottom. And what's processing is creating a drawing model, and it's creating a sheet model. And the sheet model will hold 2 to 3 of the drawing models. So a drawing model represents each cross section individually. Sheet models will place 2 to 3 of them in there and give you the sheet. You'll notice that the shapes showed up in the 3D window like they did here. But I also noticed that they're solid white shapes. Now there is a transparency to it. So if you just select your View 2 window and go to your View Attributes, you can turn on that transparency, and it looks a lot nicer. You can see through the windows and see your project behind it. I also have another video out there that talks about taking these shapes and moving them so you can move them around. Well, I'm not going to do that in this presentation. This is just all about laying out some earthwork. Okay, so I go back to my View 1, and I want to create these meshes that represent our cut and fill for our project. And it's going to do the whole project. So to do that, I need to go all the way down here to the Home tab, which will bring us to the ribbons. And the ribbon I'm looking for down here is this Model Analysis and Reporting. And under Civil Analysis is where that tool is located. So if I go to there and I go to my Create Cut Fill Volumes here and select it, it's going to bring up another dialog with some options. Now, the cut and fill feature definitions are already predefined, so you just have to left click through those. And later on, we'll get into the unsuitable, custom, and substrata. But I'm going to go ahead and accept these with the defaults. And then I'm going to data point to accept the selection, and there'll be a processing window or bar on the other side. And it'll process, and it does it for the whole job. And you can see there's a lot of cut in here, all this blue, and then very little fill. That's why I picked this section. I wanted to show both of them. So it creates this mesh shape, and if you select the mesh shape that's out here that represents the cut, and you hover over it, sometimes you can hover over it and get that little properties box. If you can't, with it selected, you can go to properties on the left side here, this little tab, And you'll notice that you get your normal information, but you also get some civil quantities for the whole shape. Okay, your square footage and your cubic feet. Okay, but that's for the whole shape. Then you have the fill, which you could do the same thing. Well, this one's going to let me have the properties box. Get that properties. Again, you'll get your square footage and you'll get your cubic volume for those shapes. But we want to do a specific set of cross sections, those areas. And if I go into maybe, and this is how I navigate through the different models that's been created, because we cut cross sections, it creates models, and I could go to the Home tab and open up the Models tool and then double click and get through my models. I could do that, or through the pull down, however you want it. But I kind of like this view tools down here at the bottom left. And if I select the MultiModel View, which that's what I'm in right now with the 2 and the 3D, it allows me to choose the different models that's been created. So you've got a couple 617s here. One says sheet behind it, which is a compilation of probably 617 and 618. And then you have all the individual ones. If it don't say sheet, that's a drawing model. And I'll go ahead and open up 618 and show you what that looks like. So that's just got a gray background to it. It's got our project in here. You can also see it's already been labeled because we chose that label annotation group to label just our cross sections without the major and minor grid lines. You'll see you got your elevation offsets. You got some slopes out here. And what is this? Oh yeah. What's this one? What's it talking about? Well, what's going on here is a bug, and they're working on it. It is actually still labeling what it sees in the background is a clip from our 54 to ramp 4. This is where ramp 4 would be. So it's labeling it. But it is a bug. They're going to fix it. You can also see that there's this blue shape that goes around the project. That's the cut. And then you have your red shape that goes around, which is the fill. But in this model, there's no earthwork that's been calculated at all. We have to do that through another couple steps. Okay, so to do that, I want to go back to my multi-model view, which again brings me back to that 2D and 3D view. And before I do that, I want to show you that these shapes out here, like this one here, I'll just pick one over in this 3D window. And if I go over to the properties on the left side and open it up, it's a name boundary. And if I select one of these stations, down here in the civil properties, there should be an end area volume XML fragment. It's missing, so when we ran our sheets, we didn't get any calculations. The next step that we do provides the information for this XML report. So it's empty. We'll go back to our 2D. To go ahead and calculate your earthwork, you simply go back to that civil analysis tool, the pull down, and you go down to this other one called End Area Volume Report. Now, when you open this one up, you get that small dialog. It defaults to the name boundary group that you have there. You can hit the up-down arrows if you had other ones to calculate. I only put one in here, or if you do none, it's going to calculate, this XML report is going to calculate for the whole project. I want to just do 54. So once it's at that, I go ahead and left-click to accept it. It gives me an option here to remove cross-sections. So if I had a bridge or something out here that I didn't want to show, I can remove just by hovering over it. You see how it turns cyan. I left click on it, it removes that cross section, so it won't calculate between these cross sections. Okay, but I want to calculate everything. I want to see it all, so I'm going to reset to complete, which is the last part of that. So I'll right click. It's going to process the name boundaries, gives us our end area volume report. And what we've learned about this report is this first thing you might want to do is check your tools. And I've already done it, but it comes defaulted a little differently. So I always like to go to Tools, Format Options, and make sure I have English stationing because it comes up as metric. And I want Convert to cubic yards for any earthwork I'm doing. So I want that on. And then usually you want to change your direction and your angular to degrees, minutes, and seconds. Now, unlike SS4, when you change something, it would automatically do it in the background. This does not. It only changes when you hit the close button, but it does change. Okay, and we also have the other XML reports that are out there, so you can look at it by station and look at what you've got cut, fill. You can do all that, see your mass ordinate, but we're going to just leave it at end area volume just for this example so I can show you how they match up. And I'll move this out of the way. Okay, so we ran the report. Now if I look at this, this shape out here, and I probably picked a different one, but it doesn't matter. And I go back over to my properties, and I open up my name boundaries and click it. You can see the end area volume fragment has been filled out. And I can't make heads or tails of that, but somebody else might be able to. But it's filled out, and that's the important part of it. So select a blank area. Now I'm going to go change and go to, let's go to 618 and look what it looks like. Nothing's changed yet. Got to go through one more step. Okay. Going back to our drawing production tab, we got to annotate the earthwork. The shape's ready for it, but we still have to go out and place it. So under drawing production, we have this option for model annotation. Okay. And we want to do annotate model. Now we already have some annotation out there, so we're okay with what we've got there. We just want to add to it. Do we want to do all the drawing models? You can either select this button or you can hit the up down arrow. It doesn't matter. And as far as changing the annotation group, you have to hit this little square with the three dots on there to get that to change. So I'll select that, and of course it comes up on the other screen every time. And you'll see there's a cross-section folder that we need to drill down through. And in here, what we're looking for is our excess EAV annotation. And that's all it's going to annotate is what we've done in that end area volume report. So I'm going to do it for all models because we didn't do it before. And when I left click, it's going to accept my all models, and then left click again to accept that annotation group. Of course, it's processing. And you'll see now we have a block up here in the upper right-hand corner that represents our annotation for our earthwork, gives us our cut and fill areas, and our adjusted volumes. So if I go back and I look at 618, I believe we did, you can see that the cut area is 596.9, and we're sitting here 596.9. It had rounded up, and our fill area, we got the same values in there, so it's matching up and it looks good. Now the other thing about this is, I'll go ahead and move this out of the way, is when we go to our sheet models, and I'll go to 619, and again it's going to populate as many as it can fit in there at the project. You can also see that that has come out as well and filled out all our end area volume information. Okay, now there's some other tweaks I want to work on with this for right now. I mean, as soon as they finish this up, get that fixed, that's an annoyance for one. And I don't, if I had ramp 4 in here, back to 618, if ramp 4 was actually in here, you would actually see the elevation offsets to it as well would all be annotated, every point, but all those annotation points, annotation go back to the center line or the baseline of this alignment. It's something that is also a bug that we're working on. But that's pretty much all I had for this technology preview. Hopefully we can bring you something next time as well. I'm running out of ideas, so if you get any ideas, you can share them, and that'd be great. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. And as always, if you have any questions, you can email, Skype, Microsoft Teams, any one of us, or the CADD group as a whole, and we'll get back to you. Is there any questions at this point in time? Anybody got anything they want to ask or talk about from anything that's been presented?
Hey, Bill, it's Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Got a quick question for Kevin. Say something happened to think about.
Kevin has left the meeting, so no, I'm here.
It's just a minor thing. When you were talking about getting rid of the T drive, we may have to think about that one for a little bit, because the box culvert program that we use to get bar bills for our culverts and whatnot generates a file, generates the bar bill file in the T drive.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So we'd have to do.
We would have to address all that stuff before, we would. I know IS is, wanting to get rid of the T drive. I'm not, supporting as much, but eventually I think we could get rid of it as long as cover everything. So
That ain't what you said in the earlier meeting. Something about cold, dead hands, all that stuff. Take it from them. I don't know.
yeah, it's more IS than us wanting to get rid of the T drive. So
I understand. I just happened to think of that when they mentioned the T drive going away. It's like, we might want to think about that for a little bit.
Yeah. That's kind of stuff we have to cross that bridge and take care of that stuff as well. So
Anybody got anything else? Anything at all? All right, we'll conclude this meeting for this month, and we'll see you next month. Thanks, guys.
thanks.
Thanks for sharing.